Suha al-Mamluk, born 1995 at Tufa, read by Tab Gary. Every day Gaza changes. That's why my dreams always change, and each time I make a step forward, I go 100 back. In the first hit of the war, I was going home from school and didn't know the road. Suddenly, a man stood in front of me and asked me, "Where's your house?" I told him, and he took me home. I went down to the house quickly and asked my dad, "Why didn't you come get me?" My mum said, "It's normal, dear. Go study." I told her, "There are no exams. The war started." In the afternoon, they hit the government building near us. My mum said, "It's normal. We are used to what is happening to us." We went running to the neighbours, each one looking out for himself. After minutes, the neighbours' relatives started coming and the house became packed, with more than 100 people in it. But still, things stayed normal for my mother. In the morning, Dad went to buy bread and stood in line for 6 hours, coming home with 1 pack of bread. Each of us got half a loaf, and still my mum said normal. In the evening, my parents decided to go to the hospital and visit the injured, and I went with them. In the hospital, we saw many corpses. They were 4 on each bed, under and on top of each other. Only then, my mother said, "This is not normal." The war isn't over. The war is big, and my fear is to grow up with it. I'm always scared of a new war. If a balloon bursts, I'm scared. If a car hits a strong brake, I jump 20 meters. And if a small kid yells, I start yelling with him. I stay up all night waiting for a new dawn, but each morning that comes does not differ from the one that passed.
Fatima Atala, born 1996, Ash Sheikh Radawan, read by Sylvia Tyers. Gaza's fish ran away, but people were not able to. They opened the sewage into the sea, and if the sea could talk, it would tell them, "Shame on you for what you're doing to Gaza and me." Instead of music and acting schools, Gaza became a school for shooting and murder. I'm very scared by nature. I'm scared of cockroaches and birds, and I worry, day and night. The first day of the war, all the girls went home except me. I was the very last one to leave school. I was sitting there, shaking. I couldn't stand on my legs. Finally, I felt that if I don't help myself, no one would. I gathered my courage and stood up, shaking, and walked like a tree in the wind, all of me trembling. People were walking near me, but no one felt me. The sounds of rockets got louder and the horror in my heart grew deeper. Usually, the distance from school to my house is half an hour, but that day I got home in 15 minutes because of my fear. It was the time I was most scared in my life. Every second, I thought I would die. It was the first time I feel this terrible loneliness, even though the streets were full of people. I got home and stood at the window. A rocket fell near our house and I flew off the ground and landed on my back. For the whole war, I couldn't stand at the windows. I started sleeping in an inner room that doesn't have a single window. I think I'm still scared, till today, but I pretend not to be.
Fatima Abu Hashem, born 1996, Al Jalal Street, read by Grace Barclay. When I talk to Palestinian kids in Europe, I feel sorry for them, and I don't wish to be like them, because they're in diaspora. They plant their dreams in a land that's not theirs. Dreams grow with the people and the country. I love life, love to play, and love people. I wish I could be the president of Palestine for one day, so I can enrich love and peace between people, end the hatred and spite in their hearts, and end the internal division. This would be my first presidential decision. But, unfortunately, I'm not the president, and that's why there was a war. The war opened up with bombing like rain. We came running out of school in fear, and found the whole world running in the streets. People were looking for their sons and sisters and mothers. Everyone was running with their heads raised to the sky. Honestly, they looked strange. I saw one of them from a distance, wearing pyjamas, barefoot and running. When I first saw her, I didn't recognise her, but when I got close to her, wow, That's my uncle's wife, the chic one who doesn't leave the house without looking top-notch. Then I was sure the war had started. It's been more than a year since we've been talking about the war. We lived it and continue to live it each day in detail, because the TV, the phone and the doorbell are all things that remind me of the war, and I don't like them. You know, I even threw away my mobile, and I'm most scared of being alone. I think, what would I do if a war starts and I'm alone? Who will protect me? And when I'm with the family, I start to think how I would protect them. I had a big dream, to become an actress. But this dream started shrinking slowly, because people in my country don't look at an actress in a positive way, even though acting is important and allows me to relay the picture of the suffering of my country and society to the world. I have a second dream, if the first doesn't work out, to be a journalist. And the third dream is to make a family that I love and who love me. The fourth is for us to be free, and for the flag of Palestine to fly freely. And the fifth is to see people happy, without death, destruction, deprivation or war. And the sixth and last is for me to finish this monologue and come down from the stage.
Yasmin Abu Amer, born 1996, Al-Shujaya. Read by Esme Moriarty Smith. I want to be a specialist in the science of metaphysics. You know why? Because I think that Gaza itself is behind nature, and I got so much from my presence here in Gaza that I'd like to transfer my skills to others. The Shujaya camp is always the centre of events. Each time the occupation wants to invade Gaza, they pass by our house. When the war began, people left their houses thinking that the Shujaya would be hit. It's normal in this case to leave our house. Everyone was calling my dad to convince him to leave the house. My brothers from Algeria, my uncles from the States, my uncles from Ankara. The whole world was begging my dad and he wouldn't budge, refusing to leave the Shujaya. 3 days with my mum having packed the house stuff and we were in suspended travel mode. We want to go to my sister's house because it is safer there. After we were exhausted from talking, he agreed and said, "You go and I'll follow." How can we go and leave him? My mum was smart. She left the bread at home, and you know how dear bread was in the war. As soon as we got to my sister's house, she called him and said, "Salman, we forgot the bread. Bring it for us." And Salman fell in the trap and brought the bread, and we wouldn't let him leave. The next morning we woke up to a phosphorus bomb that fumed the street. We all started crying, our tears falling because of the phosphorus. The bomb was easier on us than Dad's taunting. He said, "I told you let's stay at home. It's better for us. There's no place like home." And on it went. What added fuel to the fire is that the mosque and the house next to my sister's house were destroyed in the bombing. And you can imagine what Dad did to us. He wanted to take us back home immediately. No sooner had he finished his words than we were told that the house next to ours in Shujaya was bombed and the front of our house ripped off. Then, for the first time, all of us looked at Dad. We stayed at my sister's place. It became clear to us that wherever we were in Gaza, in the war, we were not safe. After the war, I started to always dress in a very clean and tidy way, so that if I die, I would die a nice death. But it would be the biggest problem if I was hit by a rocket, because I'd become 100 pieces, and I'd like to die in one piece. Wow. Gaza and Gaza's dreams. Our dream has become to die a good death, not live a good life.
Ahmed Taha, born 1996, Al-Daraj. Read by Nurnahar Molla. All my life, I thought Gaza was the biggest and most beautiful city in the world. But once, I went with my dad to Jaffa and came back home with my head spinning. After that, I felt that Gaza was the size of a needle hole and wasn't beautiful. And it keeps getting smaller and worse. No one can breathe, and on top of it all, we are not allowed to travel. Every time I walk the street of Gaza, I suffocate. Jaffa's picture won't leave my mind. I ask myself, where are we? We're so far from the rest of the world. That's why I'm always at the sea, because I feel it's not from Gaza. I keep writing my name on the sand, and the waves come and erase it. Before the war, I wanted to be an electronics engineer, but since the war, I hate going to school. I feel I won't be anything important in my life, and even if I will, so what? It's all the same in this city. Am I going to be the prettiest flower on a garbage heap? When the bombing began, all the schools in Gaza went home, except us. The principal wouldn't let us leave. The kids freaked out, and in a second they went out in the schoolyard. The weird thing is that I'm in the Zaytuna school, the one near the Ministry of Passports, which got hit first. With the first hit, a piece of a rocket flew onto the biggest tree in the school and sliced it into two like a sugar cane. As soon as we saw that, no one stayed in the school, students, teachers, or the principal. We fled for our life. I thought the only martyr that I would see in the war is the tree, but as soon as I got home, there were 4 martyrs in our street, as though waiting for me to say goodbye to them. When I was done with that, 3 more martyrs from the same family in our street arrived. As soon as we buried them and returned, our neighbor's house, 2 houses down the street, was bombed by the army and the house was whipped off the ground. Everyone died. I felt most sad for the little girls. I felt the war was targeting me alone. Out of all the people in Gaza, all day I'd been seeing martyrs. In the Shifa hospital, I saw a sight that I will never forget. Hundreds of corpses, one on top of the other. Their flesh, their blood, and their bones all melting on each other. You wouldn't know the woman from the man or even the child. Piles of flesh on the beds, and lots of people screaming and crying, not knowing where their kids are, their men or their woman. That night, I came home from hospital and was awake till morning from fear. I thought that it would only be that night that I couldn't sleep, but till today, I see them in front of me and I can't sleep.
Reem Afana, born 1996, Al Saftawi Street.
Read by Vicky Oliver.
When I was young, I used to feel that I was the happiest child in the world. But the more I grow and my mind grows, the more my worry grows, because I start to understand things that I did not. I start to know the meaning of a deprived child. The thing that upsets me and makes me cry the most are children's tears. All children in the world, regardless of their nationality, religion, or colour. When I grow up, I want to be a paediatrician, and that's the hope that gives me a big push in life. Even though I'm fed up, bored, and sad because Gaza doesn't have a life anymore. Yesterday I was sitting in school and heard the sound of planes. I got really scared. I wanted to run from school. I felt I was going to die because I remembered the war. The scenes of war don't leave my mind. On the 3rd day of the war, my family was sitting together, talking about what was happening in the war, and my grandmother was reassuring us so we wouldn't be scared. We were actually calmed, even though the sound of rockets didn't stop. My grandmother's warm voice was calming us. The phone rang. The lines never caught in the war, so when we heard the sound of the phone, we were happy. Hello? Yes? This is the Israeli Defense Army. You have 5 minutes to clear the house. It's for your own benefit. We have warned you. I couldn't stand on my legs anymore. Everyone in the house started yelling. My grandmother was the first one to run away. It was the first time I'd seen her go so fast. My dad held me and my sisters and told us not to be scared. He was pulling me to leave, but I was going to die if I didn't take my teddy bear with me. I felt that I would betray him if I left him under the bombing. I escaped from Dad's hands and ran to my bed, took him in my arms and left. We all got far away from the house and sat down to wait for 5 minutes. They were the longest 5 minutes in history. They became 10. We felt like they were years that passed. I was in a whirlwind. Thoughts and dreams were thrashing about in my head and the world was spinning. I felt that the dream of being a doctor was very, very far away. I held the bear and remembered myself when I was small, how I was always laughing. I wanted to go back to being small and stay small. I don't want to grow up. But the only thing that comforted me was the love of people who didn't leave us for one moment. Gaza is full of love.
Tamina Jam, born 1993, Ashik Radwan, read by Adam Dorr. Gaza is a matchbox, and we're the matches inside it. When the war started on Gaza, all the media was focused on us. Al Jazeera, Al Arabia, and all the satellite channels were focused on Gaza, and the occupation wouldn't leave us alone. The whole world became busy with Gaza and what's happening in it. Suddenly Al Jazeera wrote, "Breaking news, death of Mohammed al-Hindi." And it wasn't normal because that Mohammed, he's my uncle, my mother's brother. It was the first time I see the screaming move from live broadcast on TV to the house. Screaming and yelling and tears, all of it mixed up together, and it moved from our house to the street, and my mum fainted. A while later the phone rang. It was my second uncle calling to tell us that Mohammed was martyred. He didn't know the whole world knew the news. This television is awful. Before a person is shot, as the bullet is on its way to his chest, the television already broadcasts the news. These days, all the channels are sitting idle, praying to God to send another war in Gaza so they have work. Anyway, we all started crying bitterly for my uncle and remembering him and talking about him. We kept talking about him for a long time. Then it started getting less because death became normal in Gaza. After the war, I stopped caring whether I live or die. After what we saw in the war, I don't care about anything. Because I think each day I live is the biggest bonus, and all the life I live after the war is extra because I could have died at any second. You know, I'm sick of the city even though I love it, and I'm sick of the people too. Sometimes I feel that I know the 1.5 million who are in Gaza. There's nothing new, the same is repeated every day. I feel like travelling, like changing scene and faces. As soon as I wake up every morning, I see the electricity pole in my face. I wish I'd wake up one day and not find it there. Each day, Abu Ibrahim stands at the door of the supermarket, and Abed the beef seller is selling his beans, and Abu al-Abed is sitting at the door of his house, afraid this house would run away. Ibrahim is standing with Hassan. I know the taxi drivers one by one. I know who takes us to the city and who goes to the beach. It's soul draining. The only hour in my life that's different is the one where I come to theatre practice. It's become my work and mission. I wait for it impatiently. Without the theatre, I would have gone crazy. When I grow up, I want to be a big actor. I've loved acting since I was a kid, but any institution I used to go to when I was a kid threw me out a few days later. But this time it's different.
Ala Hajjaj, born 1996, Al-Shujair, Al-Munta, read by Emma Willats. I feel like running in the streets till my headscarf flies in the sky and I fly after it. Sometimes I feel like being totally crazy, but I can't. It's the first time I say things like this. Maybe they're not the kind of things I say, or maybe they're the things that I can't express, or I'm scared to express. Why do my parents treat me like this? I look at the girls my age, how they're living their lives, and I envy them. I wish I could be like them in their confidence and freedom. I wish a ship would carry me to a distant island and throw me on its shore, far away from the world, from everything, especially the war. Speaking of the war, all the war was one pile and Mum was the other. I'll never understand why my mum kept describing things to me that I'd already seen. She and I were standing on the balcony. They bombed our neighbour's house, and one of the neighbours died. We saw how the house was destroyed and how the corpse flew onto the street, and you can imagine what happened to the family after that. Did it end? No, it didn't. Mum started telling me about how our neighbour's house was bombed and how our neighbour flew from the house like she was talking to someone who hadn't been standing with her. And on it went. Stories from Mum all through the war, and I was the only listener. We'd be sitting watching TV and they would say there was a bombing or destruction in some place. The report would be 15 minutes long, but Mum's repeated report would be 2 hours. She'd talk about the report like I hadn't been with her. I started to doubt myself. Had I been sitting with her or not? I swear I was there. I was really there. I was sitting next to her. Anyway, thankfully Mum isn't with you. Otherwise she'd give you a headache with her stories.
Mohammed El Omrani, born 1995, Al-Shuja-Iye, Al-Montar. Read by Robert Isaacson. Gaza, the warm arms and the fire of hell. Horror, fear, death and destruction. But this time our area was safe. Every time the occupation attacks, they hit us first. But it looks like this time they got bored of our area and wanted to make some change, so we got lucky. I used to spend the whole day sitting on a chair, watching people running away from their houses towards the borders, carrying their belongings, sons and daughters, and going west. Some of them were carrying their kids on their shoulders, their mothers on their backs. Where they were going, you don't know, till all of Gaza got squeezed into one area. Then the distance became tighter, and they started running away from the mosque, and it got tighter and tighter, till they got to our house. I said to my father, "What? Is it our turn now? But where are we going to go?" My dad insisted that we stay at home and said, "A person who leaves his house loses his dignity." I said to myself, "Kid, stay put. You're not better than others, and whatever happens, happens." All day I would busy myself with food, and sometimes we'd go fill water with my cousins from the pipes in the street. It was about 1,000 meters away from the house. We used to take the donkey cart of Sabri. Him and his brother used to come with us to help. All the way he would tell us about his heroic acts and his horse, and how he would go to the wilderness and hunt birds with the slingshot. I never carried a slingshot. It's scary. But the stories were nice, and in those days entertaining, despite our fear. We used to talk so as to lessen our fear from being in the streets. When daytime was over and night came, we would say, "The night has come with its worries." We couldn't even sleep. I used to sleep for 15 minutes and wake up for 3 hours. How can you sleep with the bombing going on? And we're lying in bed, waiting for our fate. Sometimes I'd look at the sky from the edge of the window and find the world so red with fire and smoke everywhere, and I'd ask myself, why is the whole world at rest, and we're living in an inferno?